Today we are addressing the topic of net zero, and ironically enough, I think for me and two of the speakers on the panel from the UK today, it is in fact one of the hottest days of the year recorded ever. It's over 40 degrees in parts of the country, and I think a clear indicator of the impact of climate change and carbon. So actually more of just a heads up in case one of us has to run off and do an emergency ice cream run. Now I'm sure most of you have seen the net zero phrase and the UK-wide ambition by 2030 for water utilities to reach net zero. So we're going to explore this a bit further today. And as a bit of context, moving and treating water and wastewater is an energy-intensive business, with water utilities accounting for around 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So the water, as an industry, has a responsibility. This could also potentially double by 2040 in light of growing demand for water. And I think the three speakers we have today on the panel really bring unique complementary views, from a utility to a consultancy to one of the world's largest water technology companies. So I'm pleased to introduce our panel. We have Andrea Geisin, who is the Net Zero and Innovation Director for WSP. Hi, Andrea. We have David Riley, the Head of Carbon Neutrality at Anglian Water. David, welcome. And last but not least, we have Austin Alexander, the Vice President of Sustainability and Social Impact at Xylem. Austin, hi, good to see you again.
I think what we've got to remember in this is that delivering against net zero has a number of benefits in terms of responding to climate change. And that's accompanied in the purpose of Anglian Water to bring environmental and social prosperity to the region that we serve. So in fact, we've had carbon targets in place now for a number of years. So we're looking to be net zero by 2030, but also reduce our capital carbon emissions in how we build our assets and maintain our assets by 70% by 2030. So when you're looking at net zero and taking into account the stacked benefits that occur, those also link into how we finance our organisation. So the finance community coming to the fore in terms of lower cost debt, when you can prove that you are delivering lower carbon solutions. But also the wider piece in terms of how we engage with our supply chain and the collaboration that exists. Because one thing we have to remember, talking as a water company, we can't deliver net zero in isolation. It means that we have to collaborate across the full value chain. And when the full value chain is all committed to delivering against this target, that's when the magic happens, and that's where we will be by that point. We can't do this in isolation.
I think there is, because of the targets we've set in our own organisation, there is naturally a really strong focus around net zero, and that's fantastic. But we need to not lose sight of the broader impact of the client, how we adapt, how we build in resilience to our asset base, the impact that the decisions we make have on biodiversity, and how those long-term impacts play back into net zero. So all of these drivers and opportunities are interlinked, and I think I don't think we're at risk of forgetting that as a result of net zero, but I think we do need to make sure that in educating all of our workforces, who all have a role to play in that net zero journey, we educate them on the interrelationships between these broader impact areas, as well as on net zero directly.
By 2040, we anticipate the emissions related to the water sector doubling, which makes sense, right? There's still a number of people around the world that do not have access to clean water and sanitation, or SDG 6. And we're behind there. And you cannot achieve one or the other. We cannot achieve just net zero, and we cannot achieve just SDG 6, and neither are they're both equally important. And so as a sector, that presents a challenge for us. How do we continue to expand reliable, affordable services to every citizen in the globe, but do it while we're also reducing emissions? So I think we cannot focus on one or the other. But if we don't figure out that, and if we're not addressing climate change, then achieving SDG 6 becomes a whole hell of a lot harder. And so we've got to do both. And if anybody can do it, if any sector can do it, if any sector is defined by sustainability, Well, it's the water sector. So if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be us. And so we have to hold ourselves accountable to both.
We need to make sure we understand those trade-offs with any investment we make. And sorry, I have to say, it's started to rain here. How apt for a water-related podcast. If you hear any odd noises in the background, it's the falling of raindrops.